How's it going, guys? I'm James from Kit Guru. Welcome back to the channel. So last time out I was playing around with fan configurations and doing some airflow experiments inside a Be Quiet case. If you didn't manage to catch that video, it's definitely worth checking out. There's some interesting findings on there and it'll give you some pointers and ideas of how to best set up your case for airflow and temperatures in your future builds. If you did manage to catch that video and you like what you see today, please hit that subscribe button down below to get notifications when we release new content and also to help the Kit Guru Tech channel keep on growing. If you like some of the merch you see the guys wearing in the videos, you can also head over to the Kit Guru store, and don't forget the kitguru.net website where you can see all our latest hardware reviews and check out the latest tech news. Over the last couple of days I've kind of been thinking about all the different systems I've built in the past and what hardware I've seen and cases I've used. But something that struck me straight away is that I've not actually ever built a Mini-ITX system from start to finish. I've upgraded them and swapped bits of hardware out and done general maintenance on Mini-ITX, but I've never actually planned a build, started it from scratch and then seen the final product. Then I remembered that SilverStone had sent over one of their LD03 Mini-ITX cases, so that's what we'll be doing today. We'll be doing a review of this product and building a system inside it. So you might be wondering why we're reviewing a case that is 12 months old. Well, this is not just the ordinary LD03, this is actually a new version that Silverstone has just recently released. When the original LD03 was released about 12 months ago, it did get mostly positive reviews and comments from various different tech channels. One thing that did keep cropping up though was the GPU temperature. Inside this case, the GPU is really pressed up quite close to one of the tempered glass side panels, and that obviously has a bit of an effect on airflow to the GPU and the temperature that GPU runs at under load. So Silverstone has gone back to the drawing board with the LD03 and come out with this new model with a revised side panel for the GPU. What they've done is taken one of the tempered glass side panels, cut a hole out of it and just put a simple plastic grill or plastic vent over it to increase that airflow into the case where it matters for the GPU. So Kit Guru didn't get the chance to review the original LD03, so we've not got any data to compare the two cases at the moment, but what I'm planning on doing is do some airflow tests on the GPU after we've built a system inside the case, and then we'll have to get creative with some tape or some cardboard or something and block this side panel vent up to kind of replicate the original solid side panel and see what difference this new tempered glass side panel has on airflow to the GPU, and therefore whether it's improved the GPU temperature at all. So the LD03-AF, which is the one that we have for review today, it has the same three-sided tempered glass design as the original did, with these angular corners to add a bit of style. Down at the bottom of the case, on the front panel, you've got a Silverstone logo and a small vent to let cool air into the system. At the top of the case is a really large exhaust vent. Below that I can just see a 120mm exhaust fan. The front I/O consists of a USB 3 Type A port, two 3.5mm audio jacks for headphones and microphone, USB Type C connection, and then a power reset button and the usual power LED and hard drive activity LED. Then around the back of the case you've got a more simple looking steel panel with a vent down at the bottom for the power supply. You can pull off the plastic vent that has a dust filter inside, so that's going to help keep dust out of the power supply. There's also another vent along the side here. This looks like an additional vent for cool air entering around where the GPU is. You've got quite a handy sticker here that tells you how to take this top panel off, and it's quite easy. You just press in these two tabs and then slide it backwards and then it just lifts out. And then once you've got the top off, you can just push the front panel out. That just lifts out easily. That's just located on 4 pins and that holds it in position. Then to remove both side panels uses the same technique. You just pull out these push pins, one at the top and one at the bottom, and the panel just slides forwards and then it's released from the case. Same again for this side. Release the 2 push pins, pull the panel forward, and it just comes straight out. Then once you've got all the side panels removed from the case, you'll notice that it is really open in here. Looks like you've got a lot of space actually inside this case, even though it's a Mini-ITX small form factor chassis, and there's lots of access all round to get inside and install all the different hardware. One thing that I did notice when I removed both of these side panels is there's a lot of flex in this case when those side panels are removed. I'm not sure how well that comes across on the camera, but you can see it does have a lot of movement in it. Obviously when the side panels are back on, it's a bit more rigid, so it may not be such a problem, and then bolting a power supply and motherboard and everything else, it might help it stiffen up a little bit, but it is a little too much flex for my liking. I'd like to have seen that a little bit stiffer and a little bit stronger looking. Here is the revised side panel, and you can see that what Silverstone have done is they've literally just cut a hole out of the side panel and stuck a vent over it that will be positioned in front of where the GPU fans are, and I do expect that to help with the airflow to the GPU and therefore bring the GPU temperatures down. You can remove this airflow panel from the tempered glass side panel. There's just a series of tabs that you need to push in, and then once you push them in, that just simply clips out and you can clean the dust filter on that easily. And if you were looking for even more airflow to your GPU, you could potentially remove that dust filter, and that'll help again with the airflow to the GPU and bring your GPU temperatures down even further. And then once that vent has been removed with the dust filter, you can see that it is just quite a large cutout in the tempered glass side panel, and I think, to be honest, I think that is the only difference between this new airflow case and the original. Inside the case there's a few accessories. There's a two-way fan splitter cable, a few zip ties for tidying up your cables. There's a couple of spare push pins for the side panels and a bunch of screws. Another thing I've noticed more or less straight away with the side panels off is where the power supply is mounted down at the bottom here. You can see there's an intake vent there, but at the front of the power supply where the warm air will be exhausting, that's going to be really close to the other tempered glass side panel on this side as well. So I'm kind of wondering why, when Silverstone went to all the trouble of improving airflow for the GPU, and obviously that's going to help with the overall system temperature, why they didn't put another cutout for the power supply to exhaust its warm air on this other side panel here. I think if I would have been improving this case for airflow myself, I think I would have put a vent in that side for the warm exhaust air from the power supply as well. So the theory behind the airflow in the LD03-AF is that it pulls in cool air from the bottom of the case using this 120mm fan pre-installed to the floor, and then the warm air naturally rises up and is exhausted by another 120mm fan at the top of the case. The fan at the bottom has got quite an interesting looking shroud that covers the blades on the back. That's there so that any cables from around the power supply don't fall into that fan and get chewed up by it. And then the fan at the top, that's just a simple plain old looking black system fan. So according to Silverstone's own specifications of the LD03, you should be able to fit up to a 309mm graphics card down this side of the case. Now, looking at the case, it measures approximately 310mm, so that does sound a bit tight. I've actually got a Aorus RX 5700 XT card here, and I'd say that measures roughly, once I can get my tape in position, roughly 300mm. So let's have a look and see how easily that fits. I don't go straight in. Let's have a look from this side. See, it doesn't drop straight into the system. You can get it in on an angle, but the top fan gets in the way, so to fit a graphics card 300mm you're going to have to at least remove that fan. Try it the other way. Yeah, same again, so you're going to have to at least either remove the top fan or the bottom fan to get the graphics card in, and if you've got the system built up, that might be a bit of a pain, you know, unhooking that fan if you've got to take it all the way out. We'll take that top fan out and see if we can get that 300mm card in. So that's the top fan out. Let's see if it fits now. So in at an angle and turn it. Yeah, you can probably fit that in then. 300mm card should fit in, but you've got to put it in at an angle. So if you've got your motherboard installed in there and you've got a CPU cooler in there, that's not going to be easy to get a 300mm card in at that angle. So at the bare minimum, you're going to have to remove a fan and you're going to have to remove a CPU cooler to get the GPU in and out. So that doesn't sound ideal to me, so I'd probably suggest using something a bit smaller that'll just drop in straight from this side, because you don't want to be stripping half the system down if you need to swap the GPU out. At the other side of the case, you've got this SSD panel. 2 screws hold that to the chassis. You take those 2 screws out, the panel comes out, and you can fit either 2 2.5-inch SSDs or a 3.5-inch hard drive to that panel, and then drop it back into the case and tighten it back up in position. And then right at the bottom of the case, just next to this 120mm intake fan, is where you will install an SFX power supply. So this case doesn't fit an ATX power supply, so you'll have to take that into consideration if you're planning a build inside this case. And to install the SFX power supply, there's just 3 screws that hold this power supply bracket to the case. Simply take those out, screw the bracket to your power supply, and then it should fit nice and snug back in the bottom of the case there. In terms of cooling inside the LD03, there's not a huge amount of options for liquid cooling. You've obviously got the 2 120mm fans that come pre-installed. You could potentially remove that bottom fan and fit a 120mm AO in the bottom of the case there near the power supply. It might cut down a little bit of space for cable management and what have you, but it does seem like a viable option, that. There's also, you'll probably notice that there's plenty of space around the motherboard area, so you should have enough height there to install a decent sized air cooler. That's probably what I'll be doing today when I build the system later. Then at the bottom of the case, you've got these feet that lift it up approximately 30mm off the ground. That should be enough to allow cool air to that fan for an intake. You've also got anti-vibration rubbers on the bottom of those feet, and there is a dust filter that covers the whole of the bottom of the case. You can pull that out, remove the dust filter for cleaning, and then all you're left with is the intake for the 120mm fan and another cutout for airflow to the GPU. So for the build inside the LD03-AF, we're going to be using a new AMD B550 motherboard. This is the ASRock B550 Phantom Gaming ITX AX motherboard, smart looking motherboard. We're going to be using an AMD Ryzen 5 3600X CPU. To make sure that we can actually fit the graphics card into the case, we're going with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060. In terms of storage, we're using a 500GB Corsair MP600 M.2 NVMe drive. And then in terms of memory, we've got this rather nice looking new Team Group T-Force Extreme ARGB memory. This is a 16GB kit, 2 8GB modules, and this is their brand new low latency CL14 stuff. So this will be perfect with Ryzen 3000. We know how much that platform loves low latency memory. I really like the look of this stuff. Got a really premium look to it. Even the box looks good. So I can't wait to see just how that looks inside the system and whether we'll be able to see those RGB lighting effects from that memory through this dark tempered glass. So let's crack on with the build and see how it goes. I can't wait to see just what it's like building inside this Mini-ITX case. And one thing I am a little worried about is how I'm going to manage the cables, because I'm a real stickler for making sure the cables look good inside the system. So that might take a bit of thought, but we'll see how it turns out. So that actually turned out a bit better than I was expecting. I did worry about how much room there would be inside the LD03 before I started the build, but actually it turns out that it seemed a bit more spacious than even some mid-tower chassis that I built a system in before, so that's really positive. There was plenty of room for all the components that we selected. The CPU cooler we used was a Be Quiet Pure Rock 2. We could have actually fitted even bigger CPU cooler than that. There was enough space for that. The RTX 2060, that again, plenty of space for that in the system, and that was a card that measured around about 250 millimeters in length. We could have probably got away with up to 280, 290 millimeters and been able to take that card in and out without removing any other components. So again, that's another plus point. It means there's support for an extensive list of GPUs there. So yeah, really impressed with that. All the front panel cables, they seem to be routed in the perfect position for the motherboard that we used. I didn't really have to do much with the front panel connections, just simply tidied the cables up, took them away, and that was then taken care of. In terms of cable management for all the power cables, there's not really a lot of options when it comes to that. But it's not a big deal really, that, because your power supply, it's so close to the components that the cables plug into. All you really need to do again is just bundle the cables up and try and hide them as best you can. So again, the system looked really neat. There was no issue with really untidy looking cables or anything like that, and I'm overall really happy with how it's turned out. So the whole purpose of this revised LD03-AF is to improve the GPU temperature under load, and as I mentioned earlier, we didn't actually have a original solid tempered glass side panel from the original LD03. So what we've done during our thermal performance test is we've just simply used a bit of masking tape and blanked that vent off. So that should give us a good idea. It should kind of simulate a solid panel and what effect that solid panel has on the GPU temperature. So what we've done is we've run 3D Mark TimeSpy stress test in a loop 30 times. That'll kind of simulate the GPU temperature in gaming and other GPU intensive scenarios. We ran that stress test with both the new vented side panel installed and with our modified or taped up solid side panel, and you can see from the charts just how much of an effect that new side panel has on GPU temperature under load. We're not really fussed about the CPU temperature, that's not what this is about, but you can clearly see that the GPU temperature is roughly about 5 degrees C cooler under load with that new vented side panel installed. So you can see that it is doing its job. It's a worthy addition to the case, and anybody that was looking for a high flow Mini-ITX case, this might now be a good choice. So overall, I'm quite impressed with the Silverstone LD03-AF. It's got that improved airflow to the GPU now, so it's ideal to use for high-end or mid to high-end gaming systems. Also, it's a really good looking case. I like the three-sided tempered glass panels. There could be issues with fingerprints on those panels, but you know, if you're wanting to buy a case with tempered glass side panels, you're going to have to expect that. There's also quite a handy feature at the top of the case. There's a cutout where all the cables come through, so it looks quite neat and it kind of manages the cables for you. The only slight issue I have with the case is the front panel I/O connectivity. Could have done with at least another USB Type A port on there. One's just not really enough these days for me. And another slight problem that I've got is the availability of this case. It's not easy to find it for sale in the UK. I did find it for sale on Amazon, priced at £150 and from Scan at £120. So even at £120, that's still a little more than the original RRP set by Silverstone at £109. And depending where you buy the new Airflow version from, you're going to be paying between £30 to £60 more than the original, which you can pick up at the moment for around about £90. So that sounds a little steep to me, especially when all that you're getting for this extra money is a Airflow cutout and a USB Type-C port. But if you need good airflow and you're after a really smart looking Mini-ITX case, then this is not a bad choice at all, if you can find it at the right price, of course. So I hope you've enjoyed watching our build video and review of the Silverstone LD03-AF. If you have, then please don't forget, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down there. You can also head over to the kitguru.net website where you can read all our latest hardware reviews and tech news, and there's also our Facebook and Twitter pages where you can discuss what you think of the LD03 or of other hardware that we've reviewed in the past. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.